All right. Hi, everyone. I am Stephanie Boyer, co-founder and chief science officer at Rainmakers and professor at Bryant University, where I run the Sales Institute. I'm so excited to moderate this conversation because I've seen firsthand how the right signals, the right data automations make a huge difference, like being able to shorten your sales cycle or reducing burnout on your team, which is an area that I've been focusing my research on. So today we're going to explore the practical side of using data, signals, automations to be able to fuel your go-to-market success. We're going to talk about things like what the heck are signals anyways? Which ones are most relevant? How do you connect your CRM with your automation platform? And how do you use behavior triggers like email opens, page visits, intent signals in order to automate and try to fine tune over time? We have an incredible panel with decades of experience across sales, business development, and go-to-market strategy. We're going to keep it fast-paced and focus on outcomes. So panelists, can you tell us who you are, what you do, and why this topic is especially exciting to you right now? And Mary Kay, we'll start with you.
Oh, thank you. Hello, everyone. Good morning or good afternoon, depending upon where you are in our country. My name is Mary Kay Willis. I am the Director of Business Development at TellAid. I am in my 7th year with TellAid, and I really enjoy using SalesIntel. I'm in my 2nd year with SalesIntel because being business development, my main role is actually looking for new business, bringing new logos to TellAid. And in doing so, you have to start somewhere. And SalesIntel has been very helpful in my research of companies, as well as finding the actual proper people to speak with and getting their contact information, which SalesIntel provides all of that. And when I can't find it on my own, it's a wonderful customer service as well. I'll give a shout out to Charlie, my account manager. I'm sure everyone needs a Charlie in their life because he helps me all the time whenever I need it. If I'm lost or I don't know how to navigate something in SalesIntel, I can always reach out to him and he can direct me. Or I just really can't say enough about how supportive the internal SalesIntel team is when you need help. And sometimes I think they're probably like, oh, here comes another email from Mary Kay. What does she want now? But that's always great and welcome with a smile. And I don't know if you want me to keep going on my reasons or do you want to go around and let everybody else introduce themselves? What's your thoughts, Stephanie?
Yeah, no, that was great. And I love
Okay.
it. And SalesIntel, I've been using it too. It's fabulous tool. All right. So Eric, let's hear from you.
Hi, Stephanie. Thank you. My name is Eric James, Vice President of Sales at SalesIntel. I've been here for 3 years. Why this is important to me, it's because of people. And that may sound weird. We're talking like all things data, right? And all things how it all works, right? But us and everybody that has a job, right, has to deal with this. And it's very, very difficult. And myself and our company is very passionate about people and helping people solve problems. And I think today will be a really exciting phone call. So I appreciate you hosting and appreciate everybody for attending.
Thank you. All right, Jonathan, you're up.
Well, it's good to be with everyone. I'm a big fan of obviously you, Steph. You know that already in the SalesIntel team. Big fan of you guys. So just want to say thank you for having me. My name is Jonathan Carford. Some people call me Coach. You can call me John or Coach. I'll respond to either. My titles I'm currently holding is I'm the head of growth for Momentum, which is a GTM orchestration platform, basically where we have agents and automations that work alongside your teams to help them do things really, really fast inside of the sales process and customer success process. I'm the founder of GTM AI Academy, which is all about AI education for go-to-market teams and individuals. And then lastly, I'm a co-founder of the AI Business Network, which is more kind of broader for business professionals in finance and legal and other places that want to use AI. So I live, breathe, speak, eat, and do everything in AI. So it's my world, which is fun.
Well, this is perfect. And see what I meant when I said so much experience here. And so I guess, Jonathan, let's just start with you. Maybe let's start with the fundamentals. So
Yeah.
first of all, how do you define a signal in the context of marketing and sales? And how do you know when a signal is strong enough to act on?
This is a very loaded question. I'll try to do my best of answering. I think it's partly shifting understanding what AI is capable of doing. So in the past life, it'd be some sort of one singular data point, or it'd be a keyword or something kind of limited of what you could analyze and say, okay, because they said this keyword or because they looked for this SEO keyword, that's a signal and that's all we need. Now we have so much more rich data that not only do we get more data points, but we also have an AI that can analyze those data points and tell us based what is relevant on the context of the searches of the data we have that may not be a conversation, or like, for example, with momentum, we can look at the actual context of the conversation and not just a keyword and understand, is the intent or the overall conversation a signal worthy, besides just being a keyword, because that was a weakness in the past, is if someone said I have a pain and that becomes my signal, that's not enough to know if that's an actual signal or not. So part of it is understanding we have much more richer data, and two is having AI trained enough to be able to understand what combination of data would create a signal that we can then take action on, that we know we can solve the problem for. So for me, it's like it's really cool being able to have this world where, as an example in marketing, kind of bring this home. We have systems in place with momentum that we can not only track like where, when they visit our website, and like if they're interacting with our content on social media, or like the blog, or that kind of information, but also of what other sources are they going to, what other places are they reaching out to. We can track all sorts of different things, and then we know based on a mixture of those 3 or 4 things, the AI says, hey, because these 5 things happened, we believe this is going to be a high intent signal. We can go chase after it. And then it focuses, because I believe that the most expensive and also most important resource is your human people. So I want to aim them at the most important, most relevant information possible, so the signals you're chasing are more likely to be successful versus just scouring through a bunch of emails that waste their time. So if I can leverage my human talent in the best way possible, they can capture as much as I can, and AI just helps filter out the noise so we can use my talent in the best way.
Yeah. Well, and kind of leaning into the errors there. Um, it sounds like you've seen organizations like just completely misread the signals, or like miss the signals altogether. Maybe if they
Yeah.
haven't been working with you. Do you have any examples, or can you think of an instance where maybe that happened and they just totally got it wrong?
This usually comes down to either the systems are not integrated enough so the AI doesn't have the context it needs to do it, or the team itself. Like, I'll give you an example of AI SDRs. I've seen some people who run AI SDRs and it doesn't function well, but because the team didn't give it the context it needed to understand the ICP, to understand the problem they're solving, to understand the product. And because of that, the AI is doing the best job it can on limited information. So usually what it comes down to is lack of integration or access to data, or two is a lack of context from the company on what in the world do they do, so that AI can actually behave as if they were an AI employee of the company and know the information they need to know. And sadly, a lot of companies don't even have it documented. So it kind of comes down to the basics of saying, what do you solve? Who are you solving it for? Why does this matter? Why is this the tech you should go with? Like, all the basics are things that people skip over and they think AI is going to solve for them. And AI can obviously, you can create that in ChatGPT, but it requires the work to make sure that expertise, or people like Eric or Mary can go in and say, this is legit what I would say if I was on the call or message, and then have the AI be able to work off of that. Does that help? Hopefully.
That does. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. Mary Kay, you're in the hot seat.
Yes.
So let's say you're working to generate pipeline, right? An important area of your focus.
Absolutely.
Which data points do you prioritize? Like, which engagement metrics? Is it firmographics? Is it intent data? And how do you make that actionable for your team?
And good question, thank you. And recently, in my monthly check-in, with SalesIntel, I had asked, and this is, one of the, all these extra things that are available to us. So we have at Tele like a top 100 list of these top 100 are customers that we are future customers that we would like, to bring on board. And I'm tasked with reaching out to them and, introducing Tele. So I provided that list to Charlie, who in turn, then fed it into SalesIntel. And now every morning I get an update from, it's called the SalesIntel Data Alert. And it tells me, of those 100, did any of them visit our website? in the last 24 hours. And if they did, yeah, you don't get their actual name, but I already know if I'm, prospecting ABC company and I know these 6 people I reached out to, I don't think it's a coincidence that if I just reached out to them a day or two ago, and then I see that they visited our website, it's got to be, I would say most likely it's got to be one of them. So that's, right away, that's a hot lead for me for that particular day to follow up on who visited our website from somebody I know I just called or reached out to in the last, week or less than that. So I use that and lean on that a lot. And then I also, I don't want to, don't know how deep everybody wants, me to get into, but I use SalesIntel also when, it's not uncommon for a sales rep or even our CEO to say, hey, Mary Kay, I read this article about, ABC company, looks like they're really expanding. Can you do some research on it? And so I will go in to SalesIntel, see if it's even in there. And if it is, do you have any, people listed there or anybody that's remotely the type of person that I would reach out to as what I know would be a tele target? And if not, again, the nice thing I can do is go to, we have our credits, our research on demand, type up a little note saying, hey, I'm looking for information on this company. I don't have any. Can you find some information for me? And I would say, almost 9 times out of 10, yes. And it comes back fairly quickly, within a day or two. And yeah, here's the information we found. And based on who you usually reach out to, here's 10, contacts that I think are relevant to the kind of person that, you've been, reaching out to or prospecting to.
Yeah. And I know sometimes when you have new technologies or like new ways of doing things, even though you've been doing it for 2 years, it sounds like, how do you make sure that the team is actually using the insights or using the research instead of just defaulting back to the status quo or the old way of doing things?
I like to, I know you had referred to it earlier, is again in our prospecting, we know who we're prospecting and we know, we're charting again in SalesIntel in the intent data, right? So, you're looking at this company and you go into, I use RevDriver and, every day and you can go into the, the firmographics and look and see, okay, yes, this company has research, maybe they're looking for new cameras or they're, researching because they're going to be building new stores, things that are relevant to the type of services that TelAid offers. And I'm always stressed to, my colleagues that also use SalesIntel. It's great to find a name and a number or an email, but there's so much more you can find out about each organization or that particular division on are they actively searching for new vendors, new partners.
Okay, great. Yeah, very helpful. I mean, I know it's so hard sometimes to get people to use a new tool, but that feeling like it's really valuable, then they're going to lean into it. That's good to hear.
I also like that it's we live in Salesforce. That's what we use as our CRM, and it's integrated, of course, with SalesIntel. So when I am prospecting and I find somebody, whether it's through SalesIntel or on LinkedIn and through RevDriver, I can just export it right from there into Salesforce, which is great.
That is really helpful. Actually, Eric, that leads us to the integration part of things. And like integration, that's typically where automation falls apart, right? So what's worked for you when you're trying to get your CRM, your marketing automation, your analytics tools, like to actually all work together?
Right. And I think like the like beginning with end in mind, I think is like the first step in the process. What do you want to accomplish? What does any business really want to accomplish with a thing? And there's a lot of different things. When I started breaking this down, I started thinking about like step by step, like what all needs to happen and how does it all need to work? And there's a laundry list of things. But I think it starts really clearly with like establishing a clear like data governance policy. I think like when you break it all down, it may sound very, very simple, but basic things like who owns the data, right? What does the marketing team own? What does the sales team own? What does the operations team own? Does marketing own the leads? Does sales own opportunities? Who owns what? And I think that's a really, really important thing. And what we see quite frequently is a lot of missteps is, kind of the Wild West in a lot of businesses, ours included at times, right? Where you look backwards and you're like, man, I wish we would have done this differently. But I think that's really, really awesome, an awesome goal for any business. The number one is like clearly established, data governance policy and who owns what, and then from there, right, it goes down to like, standardizing naming conventions and taxonomies. I think those are like really, really important components, right? So like what is elite status like, or like if something in the life cycle changes, what does that look like for your specific business? Because again, every business may have a different sales process or a marketing process, and it's really important for each individual business to completely align on that. Validation rules. How do you prevent bad data from getting in your system? How do you prevent bad signals from being ingested? And more importantly, again, I have to always talk about this, but like, is your data compliant, right? I think that's a really good step. Like, are you GDPR, are you CCPA compliant? Those are all very important things and potentially very costly things for a business if not. But then again, if you have a disjointed, if you have multiple different, marketing automation tools, sales engagement tools, AI tools, you may want to look at also like leveraging some type of intermediary for platform integration, because the most important thing I think is ensuring that like real-time data, is accessible in all of your systems at one time. And a lot of times what we see is a breakdown where signals may be hosted in, let's say, HubSpot, but it doesn't make it into Salesforce. And really what the goal of this is pretty simple, is that anybody in your go-to-market motion, right, knows why. And I think it's a very hard thing to solve for in a lot of businesses. But if marketing has ingested signals, does the SDR know what those signals are and why they're important to the business so they know what to do with it? And that's a really, really big misstep that a lot of businesses we see. So what you're doing essentially at that point is, right, you're aligning your data models across all your platforms. And the biggest question I have here is like, are you using your custom fields and mappings to be able to ingest and be able to give the information to everybody? And what you're building is a holistic community of your data to your team. And it may sound very, very simple, but it's very, very hard to accomplish. And if anybody's building it, it's simply just, is everybody in your business aligned? And that's kind of what we're trying to build here. But then from there, do you have a centralized reporting mechanism? I think a lot of businesses fail here. We have all this data, all this information coming in, but what do we do with it? How do we warehouse it? Are people using a company like Tableau or Power BI or something like that to be able to pull this information together and aggregate to be able to look at it at a macro level, and then from there, change your business behaviors, whether it be on the sales side or the marketing side or SDR side from there. So then you get into some things like automated workflows. I think those are really, really important, right? Understanding, like, is your lead routing appropriate, triggers for campaigns, and sales follow-ups. And then from there, right, like, how do you monitor? And this is a step that I think every business could really go back and look at. How do you monitor for integration errors? You've built this whole ecosystem. You have all the stuff that's great. But what we don't do a lot of times is look backwards and say, where is there a fail-safe? Well, most companies are very reactionary. When a problem happens, fix it. How do you prevent that problem from ever happening in the first place? So those are a lot of like the, I guess, main steps. You think ultimately what you're trying to do is foster cross team collaboration and sharing it.
That is really good information, and it's a lot too. So, let's imagine someone is just starting and like they're just getting started with the process. What is maybe the most important out of all of that? What would you say maybe the most important thing is to just get right, as they're getting started, just to make sure they're not making like the biggest mistake?
Yeah, I think it starts with the first part of what I talked about, and that's like having a clear understanding and rules of engagement of who owns what. Because from there, if you don't have that, nothing else you do, there's always going to be some like misalignment in terms of, well, I thought somebody was doing this, I thought somebody was doing that. Next thing you know, you've missed months worth of leads or information that you can aggregate from your different data sources, and you have missed opportunity.
Right. Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, in so many areas of our work too. And so you mentioned something about triggered workflows. So maybe we can talk about action, right? You talked about just briefly there, I think it was like the second to last part. How do you use behavioral triggers And, how do you use, like, if somebody's downloading, or if someone's opening an email, or someone's visiting your page, how do you get that over to become a lead? And um, how do you prevent yourself from feeling like you're robotic when you're doing all of this?
Yeah. That's a really, really deep question, and probably a lot of layers to that. But I think it's a kind of important, right, to understand that there's no one specific trigger that's a silver bullet for anything in any business. And more importantly, every business is going to have different things that are important to them. I think Jonathan kind of alluded to that a little bit up front, right? But like you're talking about intent triggers, that's definitely triggers, but website, right? Website triggers. But then inside of that, you've got multiple different things. What are they looking at? How long are they looking at it, right? Are they, asking for demo and follow-up requests? Are they, looking for downloads? Are you using other types of intents like, internet search triggers? Are they visiting a webinar like we're on right now? This could possibly be a trigger. Trial signups. More importantly, some things that I think businesses don't look at really well, which is job changes, right? A very important potential trigger in the business, and then also like they're purchasing a technology, right? So like there's a lot of triggers, right? Then the business is like, okay, it's like first who, then what, right? So all of those triggers are the who's. What do you do with it, right? And I think that's really important to understand your specific personas and ICP's buying behavior. I can tell you that we deal with a wide variety. We have multiple different personas that our business sells into, but more importantly, they all act differently. Some personas, right? Whether they, if they deal, let's say in the manufacturing space, they may be a little bit more quick to pull a trigger than somebody who may be, working in like the digital marketing space. They want to be much more methodical. I think it's really important that a business take a step backwards and truly understand the who, right? And what's really important to them. And that's the first step that starts people along their journey of an effective collaboration between the sales and marketing teams, be able to create the right specific messaging. More importantly, helping support, not fully dictate the buyer's journey, because understanding that it's really, really important. And right, your business becomes more, I guess, seen more as a consultant, right, and a support versus information being jammed down somebody's throat. But you talked about, automations and timely next steps. I think it's kind of important here, right? Businesses, I think, misstep this quite frequently. For instance, right, like lead nurturing automation, right? Like a trigger, right, or an intent trigger may be, right, a prospect had downloaded an ebook. Well, what does that mean? Does that mean that, we're sicking our SDR team on them to ask them to book a demo? Maybe not, maybe, right? Again, depending on the who, right? But like a good action maybe in that specific instance, right? To add them to a drip campaign, an email drip campaign, right? Examples like inviting them to webinars or pointing them to blog posts that may help, right? Help solve some questions that may be concentric around that, right? Or like sales alerts, right? Prospect visited a pricing page twice in a week. What's that mean to you? Maybe your business trigger at that point is actually to bypass all your other steps and actually have your humans, like Jonathan was talking about, go right to that person and help them through that process. Personalized email follow-ups, I think, is one that happens quite often. Like we see this quite a bit with a lot of our customers, right, where they don't really know what to do. Like, an email was open and, and a CTA was clicked. Be a good example, right? What happens next? That's a lead, right? And marketing is responsible for generating leads, but what did we do with it? What did we understand from it, right? Did we, right, send a personalized email offering like a product demo or asking for follow-up questions? Or did a business sick the hounds on them, if you will, right? So there's a lot of different steps and also potential missteps that could happen from not really understanding what these triggers are and what the meaningful meaning should be behind it.
Yeah. And I mean, so many questions, like how long do you wait? When you trigger it, is it an immediate thing? Where does it go? All of that. I know, Jonathan, you look like you have something you want to chime in on this topic too.
I have a lot, but I love what Eric is saying here. I want to give two thoughts because it kind of is an extension of this. In the academy, we did this research last 3-4 months ago where we talked about the adoption of what is a precursor for adoption. One thing we found was AI education, that when someone, a human, is looking for AI education, they're more likely to purchase and to adopt an AI technology, which makes sense. But it's little things like this you understand from signals. Like I found that out from a signal review. And I bring that up because I want to give kind of a view to the people listening of like, with AI, it forces you to rethink how you do things. So instead of trying to build a faster car, we're trying to build freaking rockets and we don't know, we're figuring it out, you know, but everyone's trying to build a car. It's not the same thing. So an example of that would be the historical method that most people do to understand pipeline is the pipeline review. So you look at your exit criteria, you look at your med pick things, you look at all this different stuff based on the sales stages, what's supposed to happen when. But most of those are very highly inaccurate either because the data's not there or because just because you meet exit criteria of a sales stage number 4 doesn't necessarily mean they're going to buy. So signals have a way to give you this another angle. And I see a world where we'll be shifting to some point where not that the sales process will cease to exist, but part of the pipeline review will be taken over by signals saying, where are our signals at with this conversation? Have they interacted with the website, looking at pricing, looking at security? Have they gone to a webinar? Are they doing education? Like what's all the other stuff going on outside of exit criteria so we can know how strong something is and know and forecast, therefore, based on that, how more accurate it's going to be in the future. So I think it's understanding, number one, how we're doing it now is not how we're going to do it in the future. And then 2 is understanding what are those important things, and do you have a mechanism to understand and capture that in a fast way, which is usually requires an AI technology to do so. Does that help, hopefully?
It does. It does. And gosh, we're getting inundated by these AI messages. We're getting inundated by automation, right? It's like you open your direct messages on LinkedIn and you're like, probably not written by somebody individually to me, or like on the emails, or, now we have robots that are calling us. We have AI SDRs, right? How do we balance this, balance creating automation, but then the personalization? So someone is feeling like, yes, this message was meant for them, right? How do we do that? Do you have any suggestions or stories about what you're doing and like getting a little bit more success, or like even massive failures? Those are good learning tools too.
I think ladies first on that one.
Thank you for that. So I love what you're saying, Stephanie, because sometimes I look at myself, I'm like, I guess I'm still a little old fashioned because we all love AI, everybody's a part of it, it's everybody's favorite buzzword, but still, being in sales and my whole entire, career, adult career, it's still about relationships. And I mean, I see it even with the emails I get. I mean, I can tell exactly when an email's been, just they hit send on Monday morning or whatever. And what really I find interesting is when I will take the time to respond and either say, thank you, we're not interested, this doesn't fit, or I'm not the person. And then you just keep getting the same email. So it's okay, you're not even, whoever is running that is not even looking to see if there's even responses coming. So I really am big on, even when I'm using different tools through SalesIntel, if I see somebody open or downloads or whatever, I absolutely 100% will send a personal email. And if it's a really hot prospect or somebody I really want, I'll go and look and see, do I know anything about this person? I've used a lot. I'll give a shout out to my alma mater. Okay, I went to Michigan State University. And I got to say, Spartans, I don't care what your age is, I can't tell you how many times I've opened a door by doing my research and saying, oh, I see you're a Spartan grad, so am I. And it's amazing when you can connect on another level other than just, right away, like you said, business, people I think are more receptive. So I do think, I guess a long-winded answer is there is a lot to be said still for personal, reaching out, even by using tools to get to that point. But I think there's definitely a balance, at least for me. That's how I feel. And I would say that to anyone, whether there's people on this call that are 22, 32, 40, you have to have a balance when you're prospecting and building relationships, because at the end of the day, it's still about relationships.
I totally agree. Now, I've done a little bit of research on responsiveness. Now, do you have any rules of thumb? So if you're checking metrics and then you're personally responding, are you trying to do that in a certain window? Is there, a time period you want to make sure you do it by? Are you checking on a certain day, or how does that work?
Well, for me, I always like to use the phrase politely persistent, because, there is a fine line, right? Overkill. Again, for me, if I'm reaching out to somebody and let's say the only way I can get through them first is LinkedIn, because I'm still, haven't received all their information. And all I'll do is say, hi, I'd like to connect with you, or, would be welcome the opportunity to connect with you. And that's it. If they connect, I don't immediately, because I cannot stand when this happens to me, and it does quite often. Like the second they connect, boom, in your inbox, like you said, is, I'm sure, an automated thing already asking me, trying to, sell me whatever they're selling, or setting up an appointment. And I do think, it's baby steps sometimes. Again, I go back to just building a little bit of credibility, trust, relationship. At least that's what's worked for me. And again, and always using SalesIntel to help me open those doors with finding the right people, and then politely, persistently. Some people, I think it depends too on how hot the lead is, right? Can you figure out if they, appears to have a need that, like, right away they visit your website because something's gone down and they need it fixed. That's one thing, versus somebody you're prospecting, trying to get a meeting for the very first time for TeleAid to introduce us and talk about our services.
Sure. Yeah, and it's tough, if you're personalizing, it's going to take time, but then
Yeah.
as they're
Mhm.
interested, you want to respond to them as they're thinking about it and the problem is in their mind. Right. I don't know, Eric, Jonathan, what do you think? Do you have any insights, or like, do you have any, I know it's like a cliche, the rule of thumb that you like to use on some of this, or, what have you seen, experienced, or have you gotten caught up somewhere making the wrong choice about it?
Jonathan, I'll let you take the lead there.
Of course, you let me take that. Thanks, Eric. Appreciate that. um, it's a delicate balance. Like I think we're in a world where we as humans, both as buyers and sellers, are still figuring out where we like AI and where we don't like AI, and AI changes so much, so we're still figuring that out. So I think it's just a delicate balance. But I always think that taking as much human side as you can is always a good way to kind of default to, because like Mary said, you can tell a mile away of like something that's like poorly written from AI, or the personalization that the AI used was one of my advising companies that I talk to once a month. They say, "Hey, you should tell me about your company." But I'm like, I'm just an advisor, bro. You never obviously look at my freaking LinkedIn.
Mm-hmm.
Or when someone pitches me AI products, I'm like, promise, I've probably seen this. Anyways, that kind of stuff is the thing where it's been automated, automatically disqualifies that person for me. I'm like, I'm done. Like, you don't even take 2 seconds to look at what I'm talking about. No, I don't have time for this, because I take time to look at other people. I expect the same thing from me, you know? Now, I use AI to help me, but it's still me consuming it and then reaching out to people. So still that human in the loop factor. And I know it's hard to do that with scale. So I think it's number one, understanding a couple things, which I'm happy to send the audience the GPT I made for this, but it's understanding what is important, or what can you use AI for to get all the nitty gritty stuff out of the way. And then what are you having your humans do? Like maybe it is just looking at the profile for 5 freaking minutes and looking as a human being and saying, okay, can we say something and actually get their attention? Like for example, my SDR team right now at Momentum, before they were just doing automations, I'm like, guys, you can't do this. Like people are not going to respond. And so now they're all required to take at least 5 to 10 minutes and read someone's LinkedIn. So we have like most of the message written for them, which is like based on their persona. So we have the pain points and that kind of stuff. But the first 2 lines is all them. And they look at random things like, hey, I just saw you post about your dog, or hey, I just listened to your podcast, and it's legit. They went in and did it. And the responses we're getting, like, I can't tell you how many people are saying, can I hire you? Because they love that the SDRs are actually giving a rat's rear end about about them as a human. But at the same time, on the back end of that, they have all these automations happening so that they can actually have the time to focus on the human. Does that make sense? So all the other stuff, all the other writing, all the other shenanigans that most SDRs have time or are taking time to do, we're limiting that off their plate so they can focus on the human to human relationship. I think if you do that, then that's when AI has been used well.
And well, and Jonathan, you may not want to answer this, but I know you have a campaign on LinkedIn where you're sharing all these AI tips and prompts and
Yeah.
tools that are out there for
Yeah.
people. And I've signed out for a lot of them, and I'm getting a message with a link. So, are you taking time every time someone is saying, yes, send me this thing? Are you
No.
taking time to send this over? Because I know sometimes in the responses, there's like a space missing or something. I'm like, oh my gosh, I think he actually wrote this himself, right? So it looks like it. So
That
sometimes I think there's
that was
making a mistake or like having an error make it
yeah,
not look exactly perfect. So it's like, oh wow, you took
yeah.
do it.
Funny enough, I did that as an experiment just to see how people would respond. So I was like, I wonder if I show some humanity, people don't think it's, which to be honest with you, I do the whole commenting game. Like I comment to get resources and I do that. I don't mind an automated message for that because like, especially when you have a post that has 700 comments, I don't expect anyone to go through and send, it'll take forever. So personally, I don't mind that automation. Um, it's more of the follow-ups from there that I mind more than anything. Like when they start to automate that kind of stuff, that's when I'm like, okay, you can cut off the automation, you know. So
Hmm.
that's just my personal opinion. Some people may hate the automation. I don't mind it, and not just because I use it, but because I'd rather have the asset that I asked for than, you know, waiting 2 hours for a personalized message. That's just me personally. So
That's a good point.
yeah.
Eric, what about you? I know you let everyone go first here.
Yeah.
What you know, how do we balance this? How do we balance this out and, you know, personalized versus automations? And then is there a rule of thumb for timing and, you know, what goes where?
Yeah, I think it truly depends on, I guess what, you know, what audience you're looking from, right? If you're looking from a marketing audience, right? Like if you're in marketing, what do those mean and how quickly are you reacting to them? I think that may be a little bit different than a sales or an SDR. If you're talking in one-on-one engagement, I think like a generalized rule of thumb and just in
Yeah.
communication, right, is like, you know, same business day replies. I think that's like a really important component. Some people may argue with that or, you know, or look differently, but I think it's truly important. But I think something that when you're talking about in terms of follow-ups, right, is like, what does that look like for the business and how the business collectively reacts to it? And then not just like in a one-off selling capacity or a marketing engagement capacity, but what's the whole go-to-market motion look like in terms of engagements? And I think this is something that's really kind of missed. A lot of times, as an example, right? If you think about this, you've got a trigger point coming in, right? And that's somebody that's, you know, halfway filled out a sign up, right? A trial sign up or an engagement sign up for an ebook, right? What do we do with that signal? Well,
Mm,
how can we follow up with it, right? And I think that's a really good, you know, provoking, you know, thought conversation um of how a business reacts to something, but we don't know what to react to. Like they halfway signed up for it. What does that mean? Does that mean they decided not to? Does that mean they got busy? We don't know, right? And the ability for a business to test and to iterate and to get really granular on very specific trigger points in an automation process and inspect it and see and then to A/B test it or ABC test it, right? To understand like what, you know, what holistically is the best methodology and approach to move forward and then take action.
yeah, that's helpful. A lot of these is like, well, it depends, right? The answer depends, or like depends on this.
Right.
We actually had some questions coming in. I know we were going to wait a little bit on questions, but I think it's somewhat relevant. One of the attendees is saying, you know, so is getting quality responses and finding a connection really the most useful?
I would like to answer that first, just because that's, you know, my role. That's what I do every day. So for me, yes, I'm ecstatic when somebody responds back to an outreach that I've done, you know, just, you know, trying to introduce myself, introduce Tele, possibly schedule an introductory meeting. So for somebody to take the time to respond back, yes, that's very useful. And but you don't mind if I just kind of go right into the other one, because somebody said, you know, also would you try and limit the members of a company? I would say for me that depends. But one thing I have learned, and somebody shared this with me, and maybe Eric and Jonathan, you can attest to this. If I'm, you know, because if it's a very large company, sometimes there's, you know, 10 directors of IT, let's say, and you want to touch them all. And if you're also doing loss prevention or another area, I do think some companies have it set where, so I will change up the subject. Because all of a sudden, if 50 emails come through that says, let's just say, call with MK, I do think that might trigger a spam. So I try to change up the subject matter every 5 or whatever, just so maybe I'm trying to beat the system so that my emails get through and don't go to spam.
Right. Yeah, That's definitely a good exercise. It's funny, we have our students are learning how to fill the top of the funnel, and
Mhm.
we have this AI sales networking event tonight. And so we asked them to reach out to companies, but a lot of them are reaching out to the same people or people within the company, and they're sending out a lot of messages. And so it actually made our university email go to spam. And nobody could send any emails because they were sending out so many of them.
Mhm.
And so, yeah, that's such an interesting question that was asked there is,
Mhm.
do we limit how many people from the company that you're sending emails to? Or can you just, put it on that big list? So I don't know,
Well, I
Jonathan.
think it's important too to understand, right? Again, for me, when I'm prospecting for Tele, there's specific people that, I'm reaching out to. And there's other people I know really they would say, I am definitely not the person for this. And I know that. So I wouldn't even reach out to them. The only way I would is if I happen to see in doing my research that that person is, knows, either somebody else that I know I'm trying to get to or something like that. But I do think it's important that you understand who you're sending it to and that you feel that this is a relevant person for, what I'm trying to sell.
Hmm, yeah, good point. Um, Eric, Jonathan, do you have a thought on that one about, do we limit
It's
the
your
number?
turn, Eric.
Yeah. The answer is yes. You do limit, and the reality of it is
Mhm.
you can go down the rabbit hole of email marketing and email engagement, but at some point, right there's number one, there's an output level that's only, I guess, obtainable by a human without using other technology to do so. And then from there, right, there's a lot of consistent maintenance, right, with with domain health scores, and being able
Mhm.
to make sure you're avoiding spam traps. And more importantly, and then there's the brand component, right, of your business. And I think that's a really, really important one, is that, does, when you think about some businesses, if anybody goes to their junk or their junk, box in their email, there's businesses that are notoriously known for sending email after email after email. And it's not important, not relevant to you. The reality is that equals bad brand reputation as well. So I'm not going to say it depends, but I think it's kind of important for again, high level of business, looking at, like, again, what their waterfall is for the go-to-market motion, and understanding those triggers that we've kind of discussed today. Because the reality is, if you have a really, really effective workflow and automation process to ingest signals, and then more importantly, you have the right recipe, right, to take the right type of action at the right time, you don't need, to send 3, 4, 5 million emails a month, right? And businesses, I think sometimes businesses use, like, maybe email marketing as kind of a fix all for everything, versus looking internally at the process, and building the right type of engagement and waterfall workflow to be able to supplement that. So the reality is like, there's a lot of different ways to get there from a lot of different businesses. But I can tell you firsthand from all of our customers, the old school spray and pray approach of 3, 4, 5 million emails being sent out typically ends in disaster for them, and that means them
I agree.
rebuilding their domain, which is a process and a journey that's just not fun.
Right. Yeah. And it's just upsetting to people receiving all these messages, and it damages your brand. It's just not great. And when it comes to salespeople, it really burns them out too. Right? Because when you're not talking to the right people, and then you get a hold of them and they're upset, and you're getting some nasty email responses, it's just not creating a very good culture and environment.
Yeah, I think it's really important for, like, the buyer, and I think this is like a challenge anybody that's running any type of, like, very big spray and pray or consistent email marketing campaign. Ask yourself a question: if a business is consistently sending you emails, right, and it's maybe not the right time, or the subject really isn't that important to you, right? At some point, what happens? Well, A, it gets moved to junk. You may just automate it, and right, but more importantly, you become desensitized to the brand, right? You
Mhm.
form an opinion about that brand or business based on the content you're being delivered. And sometimes it's and a lot of times, right, without being able to have the appropriate signals in place and understanding what's important to that customer or what step they are in the process, it all just becomes white noise and a waste of the business's time, energy, and resources.
Yeah, that's right. And things change too. So Jonathan, I have a question for you.
Bring it
Um,
on.
yeah, hot seat again. Here we go. So okay, let's say you have everything in place. You feel like it's good, right? How do you keep your system sharp? So like, what's your approach to auditing workflows or scoring the models that you've created? So that way your strategy, your plan continues to be relevant, it continues to be effective.
Yeah, I talked to another webinar once about this whole concept, which is my opinion is there shouldn't be an AI strategy. There should be a business strategy that leverages AI, is my opinion. So like if you want to know if things are working, my question would be is, are you having more deals? Do you have more pipeline? Do you have more close ratio? Are you winning more? Are you talking to the right people? Like, is results showing? Because by their fruits you shall know them. And so if the AI is not bringing you the fruits that you need, then cut it, get rid of something else. And any team I've worked on, like from Freshworks down to other companies who have some sort of centralized AI, not necessarily council, but at least an internal AI task force, if you want to call it, they are analyzing the results from AI like crazy. So kind of going back, hopefully this makes some more practical sense, is basically saying what what are your main goals for the year? Let's just say you're going from 50 million to 60 million, whatever the case is. And then what are the metrics that drive that? Like average deal size, close ratio, how's your metrics going across the sales pipeline? Do you have enough pipeline in general? Are the right people you coming in once you get them in? It's kind of like the basics. Are we talking to the right people? Are we talking to a lot of noise? Are they moving through the process? Where are they dying? Or where are they falling off the horse? Is it a skill thing? Like, is it a salespeople not doing the right thing in the sales motion? Is it an ICP fit? Is it a product market fit? Like, what's the problem? It requires some analysis. It's kind of like when I'm probably going to say this quote wrong, but I think it was Einstein who said, if I had an hour to talk or to solve a problem, I'd spend 50 minutes of it thinking about the problem and then 10 minutes solving it. I think people jump to solution way too fast. And so they think, we need a new AI tool, we need a new AI tech. And like, but I'm like, but what are you trying to solve for? And is that the right problem to prioritize for? Because some people will say, hey, my reps are horrible on the calls. We need to get an AI role play tool. And Stephanie, I know you have one. I'm not saying AI role play is bad. I'm saying that, is that really the problem? Usually it is, to be fair, but is that the issue? And or is that the main prioritized issue you should be focusing on to really move the dial for your company? Because if you're thinking it's a sales skill process, but it's actually an ICP fit issue, then that's sales skills not going to help that because you're talking to the wrong people, right? So it's really understanding where's my problem at, and then once you identify your problem, you can then attach the problem being solved by a metrics. You can see, is the AI doing what we originally got it to do in the first place? Because if it's not, get it out of there and get something else that's going to help you. Otherwise, you're just wasting time trying to do some fancy tool that's not getting you anywhere. You're just going on the treadmill faster.
Yeah. Um, are there specific things that you're looking for, like one in particular that's signaling to you like you need to change this? This is one that stands out across the board.
Metric or how do you mean by that?
Yeah,
Sorry.
like what signals to you? I know we're like signals. What is
Signal
it?
for me.
And you're like, oh my gosh, I need to make a change here.
Um, this is going to sound hopefully not too vague. It's friction. My signal is friction. Where is the friction? Is it in handoffs? Is it in the if it is in pipeline and we're not getting enough leads? Like there's always some, if you go through and think about like this, I don't know if engine's the right word, like flow of water, right? Where is the water stopping or where's it slowing down? That's my signal. So which usually takes, I can talk to 4 or 5 people in a company in a day and I can figure out really quickly where the friction is. It doesn't take much time. Someone will say, this is such a pain because of X. And usually it comes down to some sort of internal communication that's getting in the way, or it's some sort of manual data entry, or it's something that's relatively easy for AI to fix. But the problem is people don't identify those main core issues and then attach it to, is this the issue we should be prioritizing? They just say, hey, we found this cool new AI tech, I should get this, cool. But it's not getting anywhere. It's just solving an issue that wasn't really be the one to be focused on. Does that help, hopefully?
It does. And I think it's important to remember, like, we can't just wait and see, like, oh, sales are down, right? Like,
Yeah.
it's too
Yeah.
late,
Sales are down. Yeah.
right?
Friction will tell you way before sales are down that there's something happening. Like you'll see it pretty quickly. I'd also say one thing is because AI is so overwhelming, don't worry about trying to keep up with the Joneses or whoever other Fortune 500 or Fortune 12,000, whatever company. Focus on what are we going for? Where are we at? Let's pick the number one thing that we feel is going to make the biggest difference using all the signal data we have or any information you have, and then focus on that one thing. You'll solve it faster than you think, and then move on to the next highest priority, and then you'll keep doing it. Like I posted this morning about um, my SDR has this. My leader came to me and said, "Hey, we want help on how do we communicate a personalized ROI outcome of momentum to people we've never talked to." I'm like, that's an interesting problem. I'll make an AI thing for that. So I made a tech that all you have to do is put in information that they can get from LinkedIn, and it creates this output that's personalized to the person, and they can send that PDF over. It becomes a really easy solve. I have like 40 of those things. So now I have all these tools that people are using in different circumstances. So they're going really fast. But it's always in the end goal is how do we get more pipeline? It's always around that same goal. How do we get more people, more meetings, more pipeline? And my job is to make sure I can do anything I can to remove the friction. So if someone comes to me with a problem, that's friction. I have to think, okay, is this going to help our goal? Yes, let's do it. Does that make sense? Hopefully. But it's one problem at a time. It's not trying to boil the freaking ocean. It's just saying, where's our main problem? Let's focus there and then move forward to the next tool or tech or whatever the case might be.
That's really helpful. I know we still have a few minutes left, and we'd like to hear from the audience. And what questions you have about using your data, using your signals, or identifying signals, or any of the automation strategies, trying to be more effective or more efficient, or just making sense of it. If we have any more questions from the audience there, just type them in the chat in the Q&A section, and then we'll be able to see those. I know, sometimes it's hard when you're first getting started just to know, what do I do? And you're playing around with some of the information there. As we're waiting for some of these to come in, for any of you here, just open game. Do you have like a favorite item that you go to when you're on SalesIntel? Like, is there one place that you look specifically and you're like, that's the first, like, what's the first thing that you look at when you're coming into the system, if you're looking up an account?
Well, in the morning, my first thing I do is look at SalesIntel to see if anybody visited, overnight, or especially if it's a Monday. Oh, did anybody care enough to visit our website over the weekend? And if they did, I wonder why, right? I mean, they must have been looking for something or thinking about something. So that's definitely part of my morning. Just say, going to SalesIntel and looking at just who visited yesterday again, or did I miss anybody, or and again, like on Mondays specifically over the weekend.
Okay. Yeah. So taking a look at that,
Mhm.
who was curious, who's
Right. Yep.
Yeah, that's smart. Eric, it sound like you had something to say here?
Yeah, I was going to say, I'm not going to answer this question, right?
Oh,
But well, and one of the cool things, not a shameless plug at all, I promise. But one of the cool things right now is like, us leveraging like our agentic AI, right, to be able to help, people at the ground level, especially people that are in roles that they're prospecting, right, help take a lot of the guesswork out, right, in terms of like we have website automations now that rolled out, so we have an agent tracking and managing this, and again, then from there, be able to identify the who, right? If you really have a clear understanding of your personas, being able to do that. So the reality is like once you kind of set some things, in terms of like some of the day-to-day stuff, you don't really have to look at it anymore. We have our AI agents that kind of help and do that for you. So
Mhm.
the thing for me is like, going in there to looking to see which one of my employees are actually truly leveraging, right? Our AI, agentic AI automations, and which ones aren't, right? Because results typically with it.
Jonathan, it sounds like you might have something to say about agentic AI.
I have lots. Which question you want me to answer? Sorry. I got lots of things.
I mean, a lot of people are starting to look into it. Some people are feeling nervous about trusting these agents, right?
Yeah.
Would you say advice to somebody who's just starting to look into this, to start to wrap their head around,
Oh,
like, gosh, what is an agent? Or like, can I trust an agent to do this for me? I'm a little bit nervous. What are the benefits of using this to get people maybe a little bit excited about trying out one of these?
Well, I'm going to validate a couple of things, which is the market right now when they talk about agents is exceptionally confusing. It's kind of like 2 years ago when we talked about AI. AI technically is predictive analytics and machine learning and computer vision and all this other stuff, but everyone calls it AI. So it's under this umbrella. Agents is the same thing where it's an umbrella term that means a whole lot of different things. And it's hard to know as a consumer what the crap you mean when you say agents. So I'm going to tell you what I think. It's on a spectrum. One side, you have some people who are calling agents. It's kind of like a chat GPT. It's like my agent is the thing I'm prompting. And on the other side, you have something a little bit more autonomous. So I'm going to add a little bit of layer here. So there's a spectrum of how advanced these things are not. Like if you have a signal, I call those a signal agent. So an AI is going in, listening to a conversation, analyzing it, and then signaling someone based on that conversation. It is deciding that something is important enough to signal someone. So that is a hair agentic, even though it's not quite what I would call agentic. What I would actually call agentic is not agents. And this is going to be confusing. Agents can be a spectrum. Agentic, though, is when you're giving AI both permission to make a decision and then to take action on it without you being involved with it at all. So it's understanding like, what can I trust an AI with to actually make a decision on and then execute on that I'm not involved with at all. So like for me, ChatGPT, I'm the one coming to it. I'm prompting it. I analyze it, but it's inside of my ChatGPT instance and nothing is happening except for me talking to a computer, right? Agentic is meaning that I've set up some criteria and some boundaries and basically said, here's your expert marketing person. You know all this information about my company. Based on this, you decide who's visiting my website. And then if they visit my website, then you go reach out to them and you tell me what's going on, email them, book them a meeting, take care of it all. And then tell me when they book a meeting and I'll be ready for it. And by the way, give me all the information I need before the meeting so I'm prepped for that meeting before I meet with them. That's more agentic because there's a whole list of process and tasks going on that I'm not involved with at all. You know, it's kind of like for enablers out there, I always say there's a difference between saying, ChatGPT, make me an outline for an onboarding course versus saying, AI, go onboard this person. That's agentic. So it's like understanding that's a very big spectrum. And if someone's new to this, it's going to take some time to trust the AI. So it's okay to start with the basics before you give a lot of weight to it. But I also say that the models and like technology like SalesIntel, they're getting really, really good so that the trust factor is, as long as you're adding in the security layer, you can start trusting AI really, really well. Like it's like your tech, Steph, with the Rainmakers. It's coaching people through this AI role play thing, and it's doing a really freaking good job. So the trust factor, I think, is more just an experience. And the more you experience it, the more you play with it, the more trust you have. And then you know where to put the AI and when you should have a human.
Yeah, that's a good explanation. I think people are just like so hungry for this. Oh, Eric, did you have something?
Yeah, I was going to say, Jonathan brings up like a lot of great points. And it's so true. And I think like the underlying tone of anything that's related to whether it's agentic AI or just AI in general, right, is that it's only as good as the ingredients that it's made from, right? And I think fundamentally we see it quite consistently where people have tried to do something and it's failed epically, right? The underlying data set that they were using, right, whether it be firmographic data, intent signals, contact information, whatever it is, if that information's not great, right, the AI or any tools that you're going to leverage is only going to be a fraction as good as the information you're giving it to do its job. And I think that's a really, really important thing that a lot of businesses miss and are going to really struggle with in the future if they don't get their head wrapped around of having an exceptionally clean sets of data and understand what specifically everything means.
That's a really good point. That's a really good point. Now, I know we are out of time. We did have one more question, and so maybe we'll just do a one-word answer on this. The question, what intent window do you find most effective? Real time, 24-hour, 7 days, something more than that? Mary Kay?
I guess for me, I would say real time. If I'm sitting at my desk working, doing it, and something pops up, I definitely, and I like to pride myself on that. I'm very good at following up, and so if somebody's reaching out to me in real time, I'm happy to have the conversation right then, and without even not necessarily pushing for a meeting, but just if they care enough, they've reached out for a reason. That's very effective for me.
Eric, Jonathan, you guys agree?
Yeah, I'm going to have to go with the big D where it depends, right? Again, it depends on what type of intent it is, right? But if you're looking at consumer buying behavior and you're looking at research and study, I don't want real time. I want to truly identify who's really doing non-normal behavior, because you may get daily intent signals, right? But that's white noise, that's static. They do that every single day. That's not really buying intent. I want to know outside of that norm what's really important, right? So
Yeah.
that may be different, right? So I'm going to give you that point in terms of maybe like, research and consumer behavior that way. Jonathan, I'll let you bring it home.
I'm going to say I agree with both of you, actually. It depends. But what I would say, though, if you understand the intent signals that are really important, I want that as fast as possible. So to Mary's point, if I know what that is, then I want to know about it now so I can act on it and action on it with my team or whatever the case is. However, that does require what Eric's saying is like kind of like this aggregate view of understanding what the crap that is in the first place. Because if you don't know that, then you could be taking action on things, then you're burning bridges where you shouldn't be action on it. So it's a balance between the two of understanding when the real-time action should be taking place by using historical data to understand, what the patterns are and trends.
Yeah. This is great. I know it's so sad. We are out of time. So thank you all for being here. I heard a lot of really good takeaways. Some of them, like obviously we need good data, we need aligned strategy, focusing on the problems, not just a lot more data, not just a lot more outreach, making anything that we're integrating intentional. Gosh, what else? Making sure if we're automating, we're doing it with empathy or we're doing it with authenticity. And continuing to audit and evolve, not just setting and forgetting, unless we feel like we're trusting some of those agents. I don't know, did I miss anything on that? There's so many good nuggets here. I'm going to have to rewatch all of this. But thank you so much to our panelists for all of these great insights, our audience for being a part of the conversation, asking some great questions. Thank you to SalesIntel for hosting this.
Yep.
And if you want to, connect with any of us or explore more, just reach out to us. How do we find each of you?
Yeah.
Mary Kay, how does somebody find you if they want to reach out?
Oh, you can reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'm on there as Mary Kay Raymond Willis, and you'll recognize me in my picture. It's probably the easiest way.
Eric?
Yeah, you can reach me via email at eric.james@salesintel.io. I'm also on LinkedIn as well.
Jonathan?
LinkedIn for sure, and then gtmaiacademy.com or aibusinessnetwork.ai. Either one is fine. Or momentum.io as well. I got 3.
And find me on LinkedIn if you want to connect. I'm Stephanie with an F in my name. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.